Hello YouTube, and welcome aboard the Fiat G.55S Centauro. The variant I'm flying today is the G.55S, the premium one, sitting at Tier 4 in the Italian Air Force. Now, initially I was only going to make a video on the next game, but after this game happened, I just had to show it first. You'll see why soon. The Centauro was Italy's domestic fighter design during the Second World War. To me, it feels a little bit like the Bf-109, the Focke-Wulf 190, and the Supermarine Spitfire all rolled into one. It has the energy economy of the Bf-109, although it doesn't climb quite as well, the stability and some of the maneuverability of the Spitfire, and the heavy armament of the Focke-Wulf. Three 20mm MG151 cannons with 650 rounds between them. On an airframe this nimble, it really doesn't get much better than that. Now, what makes the G.55 special is that it's one of the only fighters of its kind able to carry a torpedo. Unfortunately, since I'm not a naval player, I've literally never even equipped the torpedo on this plane. To me, it honestly feels like a gimmick, because torpedo or not, the G.55S is an air superiority fighter, through and through. At a battle rating of 5.0, the G.55S sees the full range of the Superprop tier, from Spitfire 5s all the way up to Griffins, Cannon Corsairs, and even Bearcats. As you saw in the intro, however, this plane has no trouble punching above its weight class, and the reason for it is quite simple. It all comes down to the guns. As any experienced Luftwaffe player will tell you, the mine shells on the MG151 have an insane reach. Because of their explosive mass, they're still deadly after the shells lose momentum, at ranges that most enemy pilots think they're safe from you. With 650 rounds aboard the Centauro, you can certainly afford to spray a little, and once you learn the velocity of the 20s, you'll be making a lot of allied players very angry. The other part of the equation is, of course, the Centauro's own flight performance. The Centauro is a bit of a case of jack of all trades, master of none, in that whatever plane you're fighting against, chances are it does something better than you. But it is a double-edged sword. You will probably do something better than it, in turn. And this is where experience becomes the deciding factor. Now, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but at this point of the game, the only friendly players left on my team are 4 bombers and a DO-335. Thankfully, I managed to cull the numbers of the enemies enough that they only have 2 fighters left, and we actually end up winning this game. On to the next one. Last game was me fighting tooth and nail to the bitter end. This game, on the other hand, features me and my squad completely dominating the competition. My squad mates here are folks I met on Oddboz's Discord, and together we have a Focke-Wulf 190 D13, a Bf-109 G2, and a C-205N2 along with me in my Centauro. A very well-rounded selection of Axis fighters. As we climb into battle here, I want to talk a bit about the state of bombers around battle rating 5.0 to 6. I find as an Axis fighter pilot, bombers can be problematic in two ways. American and British bombers are big and slow, so they often climb to high altitude before proceeding to the target. This makes hunting them down a big hassle if they choose to be passive. German bombers, on the other hand, particularly the Ju-288, are fast and nimble, so they often rush straight at the bases. Though this is great for the bomber pilots because they can make a quick buck, the problem is that when there are too many of them, you end up having a team that just deteriorates instantly. See, there's a limit of 4 on the maximum number of heavy bombers that can be on a team at once, but that limit doesn't change when the game is small. In the extreme case, I've had games where the enemy team is 6 fighters, while my team is 4 Ju-288s, a heavy fighter, and sad old me, and the only air superiority fighter in the entire team. And let me tell you, those games are really hard to win. When it comes to being able to defeat both fighters and bombers, I do think the Centauro has a leg up over the Bf-109, simply because in order to match the Centauro's armament, the Bf-109 will have to strap on gun pods, which, in my experience, makes it extremely difficult to get an upper hand in a dogfight. The Centauro, on the other hand, is quite maneuverable thanks to its very large wing surface, and it still has those 320 mils, which absolutely chew through enemy bombers. Now the next plane that I'm up against is a Spitfire LF Mark 9. These things are terrifying. Not only do they outclimb Bf-109s, but they can outturn even the majority of Japanese fighters. In competent hands, this thing is something that is very, very dangerous to have on your tail. Fortunately for me, it seems like this pilot isn't very interested in my Centauro, at least not for the moment. It is possible to defeat a Spitfire, even a Mark 9, in direct one-on-one dogfighting with the Centauro, providing that you're very careful with your use of flaps. The Spitfire suffers from this problem where it only has landing flaps, which means that you can actually beat their turning circle with clever use of your combat flaps at speeds that exceed the rip speed of the Spitfire's flaps. That fact, combined with the fact that the Centauro has very slightly better roll than the Spitfire does, means that you can actually force Spitfires to overshoot sometimes if you make them commit to a rolling scissors. This time around, though, that won't be necessary, because the Spitfire pilot makes a very bad decision. Unless you have more guns than they do not go head-on against Axis fighters.
Launching an attack.
One of the Centauro's weaker traits is definitely its speed. At any altitude, most Allied fighters, notably the Mustang and the P-47, will easily outstrip the Centauro in a straight line. This can lead to some very frustrating gameplay if the Allied pilots are clever and use that to their advantage. This happens a lot during this game. Thankfully, the Centauro's dive performance is excellent, which means booming and zooming is well within its wheelhouse. Remember all that advice I had earlier about dogfighting Spitfires? Let's put it to the test, shall we? At this point, the game is practically over. There are still 2 P-47s and a B-24 Liberator on the enemy team, but the Liberator is landed and won't be much of an issue for long. The Thunderbolts are using their speed to stay out of our reach for now, but with only 2 of them and many, many more of us, they can't run forever. The Fiat G.55S Centauro is an excellent all-round fighter that packs one hell of a punch. If you're looking to grind your Italian air tree, this is certainly worth the purchase. Thank you for watching.